Just a few contextual words about the first piece on the program, this Mozart concerto, which is the only bona fide concerto that we will be hearing. Originally, it was composed for a larger complement of strings, but he himself said it could be performed for quintet, as we'll hear it. And he wrote it when he was 28 years old in 1784 during the winter. And this was a period where he had now been living in Vienna for 3 years, and he had left his hometown of Salzburg. And in Salzburg, he was uncomfortable, but at least he could make a living easily. Here, he had to really become a freelancer. And so he was always looking for interesting ways to make a living. Early on, 1782, the year after he arrived, he scored a big hit with Abduction from the Seraglio, which brought him to fame, but not really to fortune, because in those days there was no such thing as royalty payments. So he had to keep looking for other creative ways to make a living. And his life kept getting more complicated and more expensive, and he married Constanze, and a year later, in 1783, they had their first child. And so they moved to larger and larger and more expensive apartments and furnished them ever more lavishly. And he bought himself a state-of-the-art fortepiano and a state-of-the-art billiards table, and he lived very well on limited means, and he dressed well. And this was a holdover from his days as a child prodigy playing for the royalty of Europe. And this became very much a part of his whole approach. And we know that because he wrote a letter to a friend, and he said, "One must not make oneself cheap here, or one is done. That is the cardinal point. Whoever is the most impertinent has the best chance." Words to live by. And so during this period, he hit upon the idea of becoming his own self-promoting impresario. And he organized subscription concerts there in Vienna. And this was an innovative idea. Nobody had really done it before. Up until that time, if you were a young musician trying to make an impression, you might, if you were lucky, give one concert per season. In 1784, the year he wrote this piece we're about to hear, he gave 22 concerts in Vienna, in aristocratic salons and public halls and other kinds of venues, playing all kinds of music that he had written. But the major vehicle for his writing in those days, from about 1782 to 1786, was piano concertos. He wrote 14 of them, more than 3 a year. And he was very cagey in the way that he wrote these pieces because he wanted to reach out to a maximum number of people of different levels of society and musical loving experiences. And he wrote a wonderful letter to his father, 1782. I'll read you another passage. He said about these concertos, "They are a happy medium between what is too easy and too difficult. They are very brilliant, pleasing to the ear, and natural without being vapid. There are passages here and there from which the connoisseurs alone can derive satisfaction, but these passages are written in such a way that the less learned cannot fail to be pleased, though without knowing why." Again, words to live by. And over the course of his life, he wrote 27 concertos. This is number 14, and it is pretty universally recognized as the first of his truly great concertos. The first movement is rather operatic in its drama, and the second movement is introspective and quite elegant and eloquent. And the last movement is adventurous and a lot of fun. It's in the form of a rondo, which means that it's based on a theme that keeps coming back. And yet each time it comes back, you'll hear it is done in a different way, almost to the point where you feel like maybe he wanted to be writing theme and variations. And it is very contrapuntal. There's a lot of things going on. And yet, as he wrote to his father 2 years before, it is geared towards the connoisseurs and also the less learned. So fit yourself in where you will enjoy the piece. So enough said. Please join me in welcoming these wonderful artists, Michael Brown as our Mozartian pianist and this young ensemble of virtuosos. Enjoy the concert.